Hello, welcome to today's episode of Kate Talks to You about complicated stuff using the random crap she has in the room with her to explain it. I am making this video to act as a preamble to this week's half-hour workout video. And this is by request of my mother, who has started doing some of my workout videos and is running into some problems in her own body as she's following me doing the exercises. So I want to give you a preamble to this preamble I'm about to give you to say we're going to talk about alignment issues, but I want to talk today about being overweight and the roles of fat just in your body and how it's distributed in your body. And I have to admit, I'm very nervous about making this video because I think it might come across as weird coming from me who works out all the time and doesn't personally deal with this issue. But I think if we leave it out there with us not talking about it as you're doing all these videos, it may play a role in how you're aligning differently than my body that you're watching on the screen. It may be affecting your breathing. It may just be affecting your sense of how you're contracting your abs or even how much you want to pay attention to your torso when you're exercising. So, we're going to play around with just kind of reframing some of the concepts you currently think about your posture, and then hopefully you can take these thoughts into your workout time afterwards. All right. So, where I'd like to begin from is talking about balancing forces in your body. When you're looking at postural corrections, we just come from this idea like I have bad posture and I'm going to work different muscles out that are going to balance out that bad posture, and then I'm going to have good posture. And when I say a sentence like that, like to me, it's like, okay, I'm too heavy on muscles this way and it's distorting my posture. So if I would just work on the other side of the scale, boom, I can balance everything out and come to the middle. Well, that would be wonderful if you were a scale, just like I'm showing. But the human body isn't two-dimensional and able to only move one way that we're balancing out. While that's going on, you're balancing out forces of this. You're balancing out forces of this. Okay. Your body has the potential to move in those different directions and combinations of those directions as well, because you're not a paper doll, you're a rounded three-dimensional surfaces, whatever, person, thing, filled with stuff. So if you imagine that your skin is kind of like the edge of the ball and it's containing the air on the inside, and if I fill this up really well, the air inside is pushing out on the air, on the skin of the ball in every direction. That's more what you're like. But instead of thinking of it as air on the inside, it's all the structures you're aware of, your bones, your muscles, your fascia, your nerves, your organs. Everything that takes up the space inside of you is pushing out into your skin's pushing in. Within your body, that kind of push pull is also going on between the bones and the soft tissue around them, pushing out. The bones are pushing out, the soft tissue is pulling in, and you're always balancing out those forces of push and pull within yourself and how the outside of you relates to the environment. See, I told you this was going to get complicated. So you've got gravity's force on you, you've got the force of the movement you're making or the force of the position you've chosen to be still in, and all those forces are pushing on you. And I know you can imagine this. If I push into one side, it creates more pressure out the other way, and we are able to distribute all these forces throughout our body. When we're constantly in poor postural alignment, it throws off our body's ability to distribute all those forces. So now if you imagine, if I just pinch a bunch of the skin of this ball, it's going to change what the force feels like of the air that's inside of it when I push on the rest of it. And that could be symbolic of a place you have tension in your body or maybe scar tissue. It's an island of tension that's disrupted the overall flow of your body distributing this force. All right, so that's like the bigger framework that I'm coming from. Oh, well, I still have one more ball out. Let's do this. So let's say that place that's out of balance is your spine, which is its own like self-righting unit, which we could talk about another time. But let's say our posture's off and we've already created a dysfunction like maybe a disc injury or something like that, where you can imagine now I've got too much gravity on me at one or more segments of my spine. And instead of my disc being full, you can already see I'm distorting the shape of it. Okay. And that's going to affect the disc, the nerves, and the rest of the self-righting system, the ligaments, the alignment of the bones. And once the system's off, we've set up a scenario that all the movements we do could impact and make worse the point of injury, or we can do exercises and work on our alignment to take the pressure off the point of injury. Okay, so we still have control over how we work on our alignment and our mechanics, even once an injury has occurred. Okay, and that's where my mom comes into this. She has a history of disc injury and fractures in her lumbar spine. And so I really want to talk about the abs in this region and how they play into each other. Now, the human body, the spine naturally has curves. So you're kind of like S shaped. And the shape lets your body stay upright and absorb some of the shock. Like imagine if I got bonked on the head with a tree branch or something, I can distribute that force and kind of rebound it back up so that I don't hurt one spot within my spine. Now, in the certain areas are more sturdy and less sturdy in that story, though, and one area of vulnerability is in the lower part of your low back. The low back curves forward, so this region near the bottom, close to where your low back meets your pelvis, for a lot of people, the disc in the lower two vertebrae have a vulnerability to possibly have extra pressure or shear forward because of their angle in relationship to gravity. And that is made worse with poor posture and from sitting too much. Okay, so two things we definitely could run into. Now, that's for all of us. That's the shape of the spine and that's gravity. But since the vulnerability is in this direction, like imagine just somebody going down a slide, okay, if I do add some weight, and I'm just, going to pretend to be pregnant here for a second, if I have weight in my body that's pulling body weight forward of my center of gravity here, I have even more potential to have that shearing force in the direction of where this weight is. So if I am pregnant or if I am overweight, I have to make some extra accommodations to contain the weight here back into my overall alignment to prevent this shearing force. Okay. And again, this is just one plane of movement. Remember, I've already said there's all these different ways you can be offline, but we have one more factor. I'm going to take this away that's important, and that is a transfer of force from your legs to the torso. So I have two hip joints, I have one spine, and the important muscle that connects those points are my psoas muscles, which connect to my leg very close to the hip joint itself. So let's just say about there. And then come at an upward, inward angle, and the other end is an attachment point at the front of each of the vertebra of my lumbar spine, that area I was talking about of the low back, okay? So imagine different finger projections at the spine, all kind of coming together to one rope and blah, 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 right into the hip, okay? So kind of looking like that from the front. And if you can imagine going at this angle, sort of, I can't promise you that's the exact angle, but from my lumbar spine down to the leg. So imagine that. Also like a slide. Okay. When I'm standing in poor posture, the upper fibers can shorten towards the lower fibers at my hip and can cause a compression on my low back. When that muscle is supple and flexible and able to modulate my spine, which is its primary role, not only does it allow me to stand in my best posture, but as I move my spine through space, those finger-like projections are giving feedback to my brain about where I am in space. It's an important part of my GPS system. So now if those muscles are chronically tight, they cannot give feedback to my brain to help my posture, And it becomes this like self-defeating system where they keep getting tighter and tighter and tighter and getting in my way instead of being the messenger of the relationship between my leg and my torso. Okay. So that's for force distribution. That's for like smoothness when you're walking, when you're dancing. I mean, that affects so many different things. Balancing on one foot, I could go on and on and on. Okay. So again, that can come up just from us sitting too much and chronically holding that muscle group as a stabilizer in the wrong function. Like it's really more adapted to us being upright and moving. Okay, so then we go back to, but what if I have weight here? And we have the potential that just the low back compresses from that force. We also have the potential that to balance out the center of gravity, I take the weight of my body forward and I put it over the front of my foot instead of the back of the foot where it belongs. So I want you to think of, I have to contract my abs all the time. All right, that's like a thing. And yes, your abs do balance out your back, front and back, but it's not happening the way I think sometimes we think of it. Like my abs do this, my back does this, and I'm in a tug of war forward and back. Layers of those muscles do in fact do that, but I want something deeper. Instead of even worrying about this yet, I want the drawing in to come from the layer of your abdominals that really wraps horizontally around you, that takes your body and just holds it in a little tighter. Back to the pregnant woman again. Baby is a growing, that muscle is a holding the baby in. All right, so we're just focusing on that feeling of compression, like support. And just like it was a baby, imagine the care. You would never want to drop that baby. So you're holding it tight, but you're not hurting it. So it's like, how do we find this balance that's enough force, but not crushing force? Because too much and we start to hurt the low back. And what I mean now is back to front and back, we're skipping the right muscle, that hugging muscle, and we can use other abdominals, but they're going to make a downward force that compresses this region that I'd like to be free and tall. All right, so what you're going to practice in addition to doing the workout is a 1-2 punch of lining up your body in the proper alignment and then activating all these nice hugging muscles to help support. What my mom was running into was that she was doing all the ab cues that I was saying, like she'd remember, Kate says, when you exhale, pull in your abs. But if she's doing it in the wrong alignment, she might not be pulling in from the right muscles. She was actually tightening her hip muscles to try to make that force, and that was putting even more pressure on the low back that she was trying to heal. Okay, so if my weight is forward over the balls of the feet, I need to back that up. Your weight is meant to rest over your heel, the biggest bone designed to handle all the weight of your body. So that's your first job. If you feel your weight over your toes, just kind of sway back and forth and practice, because it might be hard to stay here if this isn't your home. Practice backing that weight up and getting it over your heels. Now, look at my alignment. Okay, I go forward. There's all these, self-righting mechanisms. So my pelvis goes forward, my ribs go back. But when I get my weight back over my heels, see how I've got a nice stack of my head, my ribs, and my hips. A lot of what looked like bad posture just righted itself once I could reorganize. Now, my hip flexors have a proper job, which is to stop me from falling backwards. So instead of my hip flexors pulling down on my body, when I get my weight backwards over the heels, they engage, chick, chick, and kind of line me up. Then I can pull my abs in, and now we're back to breathing. We're back to the Pilates breath. And when you exhale, the compression we make of the abs acts more like a three-dimensional hug to hold us in place. And that's not the only muscle that matters. But when we get that drawn in and the right alignment, you are more likely to feel your glutes keeping your hip joint extended. You are more likely to feel your upper back muscles keeping your head lifted. And we get to make less work on our neck. I mean, I still want your neck to hold your head up, but it should be less effort for you to keep your head up straight if another issue you face is that tendency to have a forward head posture. So today in the workout, I am going to take out exercises where you have to move your legs in the air. My mother was finding she could not stabilize in those exercises with her abs, and then her back muscles would take over. So I'm going to keep the leg on the floor in a way where the weight of it is supported so we can keep our focus on the habit of stabilizing with the abs. But I want to give you that a clue for yourself as you're working out. No matter what I cue, you're home alone and you have to be responsible for how this turns out, right? So if we're doing any of these exercises and you feel your back and you don't feel your abs, there is something wrong. I don't care which exercise it is. This workout is about you practicing breathing as part of your movement so you can always make a contraction of the core muscles, the abdominals, the pelvic floor, the teeniest, tiniest muscles along your spine. And then once that deeper layer of connectivity is set, we are a more stable unit to start to move our limbs in space, okay? So this closed chain, where the other end of your limb is touching something, is a safer place to work on that on your way up to all the rest of the videos. So I don't know that this is necessarily going to be easier than the other videos, but it's just going to be much more mindful and focused. And if you have any questions about that, you know where to find me. Email me, call me, text me, write a comment here on this message. That's fine. All right, have a great day. Woo!